Hey, welcome to the Trapital podcast. I'm your host, Dan Runcie. Today we have a special guest. He is the founder of Human Resources, one of the prominent indie distributors in the game right now, which was recently acquired by Sony, where he's now an executive vice president, both there and the Orchard. I'd like to welcome Jay Erving to the podcast. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited for this. I'm interested in your career because you've been a vet in this game for some time and you've started your career in artist management, which I do think is a pretty common path. I've seen a lot of people that are now executives that have started off in. What was it about artist management specifically that drew you in to the industry?
What I was told, I had a friend who was a senior executive over at Universal when I was getting out of college, and he basically told me that management was the best way to learn every aspect of the music business because you're dealing with every aspect of it. You're making an album, you're you know creating marketing initiatives and dealing with the marketing folks at the labels, and you're quasi business manager. Sometimes you're a therapist, sometimes you're a dad, sometimes you gotta wear a lot of different hats as a manager. And he felt like that was a way for me to figure out where I wanted to be in this space. And I got blessed and lucky early to get some pretty big clients, and I stuck with management.
Nice. Because I've heard from a lot of people, similar to what you said, it's the best way to understand everything that's going on. But it could also be a thankless job too, just with all those different hats that you have to wear. But you might always get compensated or treated fairly for a lot of that. Is that similar to your experience at all?
Last to get thanked and first to get blamed is the, is
Sounds
the,
about
is
right.
the, is the management experience. I mean, it's a lot of times when it's going right, a lot of times the artist did it, and and a lot of times when it's going wrong, it's the manager's fault. It's not an easy job. I mean, it's almost not fair to give it that stigma because I feel like there are artists that are super thankful and loyal and committed, but you hate to see managers that have grown, and helped build artists, and then their relationship, they sever, their relationship for whatever reason. But we've been fired a lot, and I never felt like it was because we didn't do a good job. I mean, we worked really hard for our acts, and sometimes you just start to not see eye to eye creatively, or it's a challenging relationship because you spend a lot of time with someone and you basically have their um, career in your hands. So it's a tough space to be in for sure.
Right. Did any of those firings, did any of them catch you off guard, or was any of them things that, I guess, things that you saw coming as opposed to things that were a surprise?
Most of them caught me off guard. I mean, I think that you'd like to think, especially for the ones that we helped kind of build from scratch, and you're in these. We have to spend so much time, sometimes more time with our clients than we do with our families. And when you've been there and you've been kind of in the trenches with folks, you never want to think that you're not going to still, that you're not going to be with them forever and always. That's the hope. So they all kind of catch you off guard. I do think that it got to a point where you start to see the writing on the wall. I think initially, early days, I was so naive that I'm like, that will never happen. But you start to see the writing on the wall, and they start to insinuate that they're not happy about one thing or the other, and yeah, but it's part of the game.
Right. That makes sense. It almost reminds me of like head coaches on a football team getting fired, right? Like some of it's going to be, sure, your fault. Some of it may not be your fault, but more than anyways, if you have shown yourself and if people recognize what you're doing, you're probably going to get another job or another opportunity to continue putting in that work.
But you're gonna get fired. Going into it, but if you're going to coach a NBA team or an NFL team, or you're going to get fired. You're going into it knowing.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah, you don't go into a job like that, thinking that you're always going to have it. If you do that, you're probably in the wrong field to begin with.
Yeah, you're gonna get fired. You're absolutely gonna get fired because even if you have a great run, it's gonna turn around at some point.
Mm. Did anything from that experience specifically inspire you to and connect the dots to the work that you've been doing in recent years? Because it was 2017 that you had launched Human Resources as an indie distributor, wanting to be more pro artists and understanding their needs relative to how the traditional system may serve them. Were there any dots there in terms of what you would experience to inspiring you to start to create what you created?
Yeah, I got one of the I got fired by Jeremih, and it was actually I got a text from him on my birthday that basically said you're fired.
Wow.
And for me, it was one of those moments where it's like I'm over 40 years old, and I probably wanted it more for him than he wanted it for himself, and certainly had felt like I had built to a place where um, managing an artist like Jeremiah should be um, I felt like he should have been very happy to have a seasoned manager and someone who had been kind of around and had relationships and could be helpful. And I just felt like I never wanted to give someone that kind of power over me, in terms of um, being in a position to fire me, and so it was one of those moments where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna really focus on building human resources, building with people that appreciate my value add, leaning into the relationships with people that really respect what I bring to the table, and not trying to and just kind of made a vow to not it's I'm not a I'm not a fixer, right? And kind of knowing that the elements aren't there and trying to make someone kind of be the right partner for you, it just doesn't work at the end of the day. So that was a moment for me where I was like, you know what, I'm not going to be in this position again.
Right. Yeah, because that's a lot of power to put, especially when you're putting everything in. You have obviously all these connections, all this knowledge, and to have it all rest in the soul of, in many ways, one employer can be really tough. For Jeremiah specifically, what year was this that he had fired you?
It was 3 years ago.
Oh, okay. Obviously, you then creating a indie distributor like Human Resources, it's one, understanding the value prop for artists, because I'm sure while managing Jeremiah, you signed lots of deals. You probably saw some you might have liked, you saw some that you didn't like, but here it's clearly trying to provide the platform for artists to have something that works more in their favor, but still getting the same or at least similar type of benefits that they could from a major record label. Because it seems like that was the vibe of what you were trying to, or what you have built with Human Resources.
Yeah, I mean, as a manager, you never wanted to be at the mercy of a record company, right? So we always tried to build our, even from a management perspective, we always tried to build a team around us where if there was things on the marketing side that we wanted to plug into, we didn't have to wait on anyone. If there was, going and soliciting playlisting from the streamers, we don't have to wait on the label. Even radio and obviously touring, and like you want to build this team where it's like self-contained. You can provide for the artist in every way, and you're not waiting on anyone. And that's what we tried to create at Human Resources is true label services for our partners, but in distribution based deals.
And with this, you had created a business model to take a 20% distribution fee from the artist, which is definitely artist friendly relative to what the traditional record label contract would offer. I wonder though, from an economics perspective, though, are there any type of services that you can't offer that a major record label would, given the fact that they are taking much more of a cut for working with the artist relative to what you would take or what you have taken with the artist?
I'd like to think that we're able to be competitive now. I think when before we were acquired, it was tough because we're a 10-person team. We had one employee in the UK. It's tough to truly have global releases when you don't have some kind of boots on the ground ex US. And the the with the benefit of the internet and these streaming platforms, you're able to do a lot of the work, but really being able to properly serve and build a superstar. I mean, we've had some really good base hits, but really being able to have a real global home run. I think the infrastructure that we have currently allows for us to be competitive with any major label, in the game.
Right. And the infrastructure you're talking about specifically is being acquired by Sony and doing that deal, right?
Yeah, and the orchard, which is where my deal sits. The resources that we have there, and our ability to execute globally, and go to radio and do things that in house, do things that we weren't set up to do in house previously.
Got it. So, what did this deal look like? And I know you may not be able to share all of the examples, but were there certain things that you had to give up, or were there certain things that you had to do, or any trade offs in order to team up with both Sony and the Orchard?
The trade-off is the ownership in the business, and they paid us for it, but that's the trade-off, and having a partner, which feels good. It's all very positive. It's all, we're super excited about the new relationship. We felt like we were able to make a responsible deal, and being inside now, I've also taken a real interest in helping from the inside out, and being an executive vice president at Sony as well as the Orchard. I think that part of what I'm going to have to do is try to make change and try to create a scenario where we're advocating for the right Black executives that are coming up, doing responsible deals with artists, just kind of culturally, community and culture, is something that we gotta build, continue to build, at Sony and at the Orchard. I mean, I think that Rob Stringer, the chairman of Sony, and Brad, who runs the Orchard, are genuine about wanting to have, minority inclusion, and really kind of really have equality in the workplace as it pertains to Black executives. I think they're taking it very seriously and really taking the steps to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So I was super impressed and continue to be impressed with what both Sony and the Orchard are doing in that space.
Was it a tough decision at all? Because I mean, on paper, it all makes sense, right? There were certain things that you had limitations with. You wanted to be able to have a platform for global superstars, and you didn't necessarily have that. Sony and the Orchard offer that. But in some ways, I'm sure human resources was still your baby. Like, you probably wanted to maximize it to its full potential before doing any of that. Was it a tough decision, like from a founder perspective?
It was tough. I mean, yeah, because you build it, and I bootstrapped the company, and it's, yeah, of course it's tough, and also, the co-founders of Q&A, which is the merger that I did with Troy Carter and Susie Rude, like that's my family. So it's like that part is tough. It's tough to it's tough. It's not an easy decision, and I've never had a job before, so that in itself was something that I had to really give thought to. But I'm not complaining. The opportunity is awesome. The both Sony and the Orchard have been extremely welcoming and are, are equally as motivated to break acts and make change. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about where we are. But certainly you have your kind of fears going into any new relationship. And I'm sure there'll be some bumps in the road and some growing pains, but I'm committed to to making the most of this opportunity.
What are some of those fears?
It's like any relationship. It's like it's you because you go through the courting stages where we're courting one another, and then you're in the honeymoon stage. But then there's times where you got real hurdles and real issues that come up, and I feel like that's when you really get to see who someone is when you're in the trenches. So uh those things will come. I feel very confidently that we're the folks that I've been working with are going to be there with me, and we'll be shoulder to shoulder fighting a good fight. So I a lot of the potential fears have already been squashed, and I feel really good about where we are.
That's what's up. So you had mentioned that this was your first official job, and this is an executive role. I'm sure that you've been and worked with a lot of these same people before, but from a work perspective and considering the work that you're already doing, like how much of your day is spent still leading and trying to maximize things for human resources and the artists you have there versus being a EVP now at Sony and being a EVP at the Orchard?
Human resources is at Sony and at the Orchard. So the time spent on those projects is for the company, and the beauty of where we sit currently is that I have a bit more bandwidth to be creative and do what I love and really build with the artists, because now we have a system that I can do a little bit of a handoff where it's like, and the Orchard team it can pick up the ball and run with it, because they're set up to do so on the services side. So I think it puts us in a position where we can scale human resources and sign more acts. We're still only going to sign stuff that we really truly care about and love, but it does put us in a position to do more and to do more globally.
Right. Are there any acts specifically that you feel the most proud of, or any projects that you worked on before the acquisition that you felt the most proud of from the artists that you're able to work with through human resources? Because you put out some pretty big projects and you're able to make some pretty big headways in the industry. I guess, what do you look back on in the pre-acquisition?
It'll sound cliche, but it's like you're proud of all of them because we're so early in the game. I don't have the benefit of certainly didn't have the benefit in the beginning of being competitive with most distribution companies, and certainly not the labels, because we were new. We were very limited resources. I was taking a couple pennies out of my pocket to pay the staff and sign artists, and so I didn't have the resources to compete with artists that were already working, right? If something already had traction, I didn't have the checkbook to go be competitive. I didn't have the team or the report card to say this is why you need to be with us, because we've done X, Y, and Z, or I can write you this check, or I didn't have any of that. So 100% of the artists that we signed were baby acts, and just getting started. So to see them be able to put one foot in front of the next and take the next step in terms of building in their career, you're proud of every one of those acts. So it's in spite of sounding cliche, I'm proud of all of the stuff we were able to do pre-merger.
Yeah, I get that. And that makes sense because you mentioned that so many of the artists came and they were baby acts, but a lot of them are names that many people that are following hip hop know now, whether it's, YBN Namir, Corday, like all of these people are people that have had hits and have made their name around. I think that for them specifically and for an indie distributor like you all, being able to develop artists is a pretty strong benefit that I think a lot of people don't see as one of the key skill sets or value, not skill sets, but one of the key value adds at a major record label. So I could see that being a pretty big attraction for them as well, because you obviously wanted to team up with them so that you could get that global footprint, but they want to team up with you because you have the development experience and track record. So even though you may not feel like you necessarily have the track record of some of the other indie distributors, you've been able to show trajectory and traction with the development you've been able to have with these artists. So in that way, it seems like the pairing of the two was pretty aligned.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think that they certainly filled a ton of holes for us, and hopefully we fill some holes for them. But that's the goal.
Right. And that sparks another thought too, because I've often heard a few people, both inside and outside of labels, talk about the fact that the development piece just isn't necessarily as strong as it could be. Why do you think that is? I guess as someone that has now seen both sides of it.
It's when you have the benefit of analytics that the major labels have, it creates a bit of risk mitigation, right? So they're taking more calculated bets. They might have to pay a little bit more for it, but they're taking more calculated bets. I'm betting on gut, and I'm not betting on analytics. I don't have the luxury of saying, this artist has a record that's streaming, that's or they're selling out shows, or they have a ton of followers on they built audience on Instagram. Like, I don't have the benefit of those analytics to know that something is sticky. So it's good old fashioned gut. And sometimes your gut can be wrong. It's because it's personal taste. I've tried to build a team around me of young people that are connected you know to like a YBN Namir. In all honesty, I probably wouldn't have heard that because I grew up on you know after NWA and Public Enemy and all of those. It was Nas and Jay, and I come from a bit of a different hip hop era. So some artists I just might not hear it. I might not get it. My son who works for us, he signed an artist from the UK. This young man named Lancey Foe, and it's when he came to me with it, I immediately shot it down. I'm like, UK rap is never translated in the US. Like, we've been talking about it from grime to this to that for years, and it just has never really translated in a real way. And I shut it down. And I was driving into work the next day, and I'm like, that goes against everything that I say that I'm about, right? Because as a company, we say that we're supporting of young people. So I wasn't being supportive of something that he was super passionate about. We say that we're a music first company. I shut it down before even listening to the music. I'm like, this goes against everything that I ever said that we're supposed to be about. So I called my son in, and he played me the music, and I got it. And then I ended up meeting the kid, and he's like, kid's a superstar, super smart kid, really nice, nice, like all of the things that you would want, articulate, fashion forward, like all of the things that you would look for. It was everything. And to me, it was like, it's those moments where I got to kind of check myself and not be, kind of an antiquated old school, not taking an antiquated old school approach, but really listening to and supporting the young people around me and their vision.
I hear you on that. it's tough to make the adjustment. I mean, we're talking about YB and Namir, like unless you're someone that's active on Twitch or I think that's the platform that he started popping off on early on. It's tough for someone that's not in that age demographic to be like, oh yeah, I get it. Like you almost need to have someone that like bridges it for you to really see the connection. Um, you
Yeah.
mentioned something about the analytics piece, and that's interesting because I've seen and heard the debate, right, about picking and choosing artists based on gut versus analytics. And I do think that in some ways, analytics is seen as being the strength of the opportunity. We can at least quantify what's there. But I'm sure that there's probably still people that may see the analytics and want to use them more for guidance, but still want to go with the gut at the end of the day. And I imagine that's going to always be a balance. And I'm sure that's probably a balance in your everyday work now because there's so much data, whether it's who's performing well on TikTok or who's performing well here. But at the end of the day, you could have all those stats, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be a successful major record label artist.
I mean, a lot of times it'll mean that you have a song. You know, I think when I look at what's happening on TikTok, like, you know, it's TikTok can tell you if you got a song. You know, it won't necessarily tell you if you have a superstar. I think part of that is gut, and part of that is doing the work. When you start to get some traction and you have a song, is like translating it and connecting the dots where people are like, okay, I know this song. I can't tell you the amount of times where it's like, hey, have you heard of this artist X, Y, and Z? And they're like, no. And then it's like, oh, you know, the one with the dance that goes like this, or the song. And it's like, oh yeah, yeah, I know that. And it's like, you got to figure out how to connect the dots. And if it's more than um just a song, you know, or just a moment in social time, you know, it's like, so that still takes gut, and it still takes um that really takes gut and also work, you know, to really to have these things translate in a real way.
Right. Yeah. The song piece, I know that that's become more common, especially in TikTok, but a lot of this existed on YouTube when YouTube really started popping, when everyone saw Soldier Boy and then everyone wanted their singles to try to go viral. I guess to a lesser extent in in like the MTV and music video days, just because you probably needed to be on a major in order to get played on, 106 and Park or just whatever the big stations were either there on MTV or BET. But yeah, I do think it's tough to at least be able to bridge that difference because yeah, having a song you can definitely quantify and see that, but there's still a gap, and I think that's part of the art of it, right? Like this is why there's plenty of people employed in doing this work, because it can't just be an algorithm that spits out, okay, the person that rises to this top of this chart, these are the people in order who are the top superstars. There's definitely a mix of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm interested in your thoughts on this wave of independence, because I think that's been a underlying theme of the work that you had done at Human Resources to help support artists maintaining ownership of their masters and their assets, but still getting the benefits of partnering with you. And there are more artists than ever that are at least wanting to follow this route or being more protective of their stuff because artists are talking about it more. What's your take on the landscape generally now, as someone that does work for a major record label but does want to see artists owning and managing their music assets?
I mean, the music space is the only space where artists don't own their art. When you're talking about major labels and the investment that they make, it's hard to deny that they should participate, right? I think that the way that I've looked at it is, upon success, you should be able to come back to the table and have a conversation, and figure out something that's fair. But it's when these artists are doing initially, they're doing a lot of the work in terms of the artist development and really putting themselves in a position to have real success. you know they should be able to participate in ownership.
Right.
I like where the community is, like in terms of, I wasn't thinking about ownership when I was 17 years old. I had no thoughts of ownership. All we wanted to do when I was even when I was 30 years old in the music business is like get an artist a record deal. That was still the goal. And to hear some of these young people talking about ownership and independence is like it's refreshing because you want to see these young people win, and they're starting to think in that way where um, they're starting to think about ownership, at very early in the game.
Right. Yeah. And I think you need to have a nuanced take at this. And I feel like from what I've heard you and also what your business partner, Troy Carter, has said as well, the music industry in a lot of ways has gotten used to the way the model has worked. But there comes to a certain point where after the act is de-risked and they're no longer a risk to no longer pan out, yes, they've proven themselves as a star. As you had said, like there should be a conversation that ends up being had, or at least being able to have it, so it's not still this protection where whoever it is, a Kanye West or whoever, like is still trying to argue for ownership of what they did, even though they've already proven themselves to no longer be a risk 15 or however many so years ago. It's it's interesting. I feel like the tough part about it is that the decision of whether, and this is my take, I want to know your perspective, the decision of whether to be owning your assets or taking the record deal or somewhere in between really lies on what your goals may be and what your ambitions are. I think if you want to be a global superstar that has that footprint everywhere, I think it's going to be very hard to do it without the support of a major record label. However, if you're a bit more comfortable owning the larger pie or owning the smaller pie what you have, and you're not necessarily as big, but you're still profitable, you're still doing what you need to do, then ownership may make a bit more sense for you. But I think making that decision can be tough for the artist that just sees upside and requires them to either feel like they're trading off one thing or the other.
Yeah, I think it depends. Everybody's needs are different, right? When you have um, pop acts, you're going at pop radio, and the expectation for visuals is at a level. The quality of the um, all of the visuals associated with it. It's like there's a standard, right? And I think that what hip hop has also shown us is that uh, with very little resources, making the right records, culturally making the right moves, um, you can move into that pop popular pop culture space without a ton of resources. So I think for a lot of artists, it just depends on what they're looking for and what their needs are. What I would recommend is that artists should build as much as they can independently, and and be able to have enough leverage going into a major label deal where they're able to get terms that are a bit more fair. I think and that part is no different from a lot of other industries where if you have an idea and you go to someone to fund it, they're gonna want to own the majority of it. If they're putting up millions of dollars for you know what what everybody has high hopes for, but there's no proof of of concept or that it works. They're gonna want to own a big chunk of it. So my advice is always to go do the work, do as much as you can, build as much as you can, so you're going into these conversations with a bit more leverage.
Right. Yeah, and that's where music is so interesting because I mean, you look at your standard record deal, whether it's a 83/17 split or one of these 80/20 splits, and you compare that to something like tech, it's probably a bit rarer that a founder is giving up, 80% or 83% of the business in exchange for what is out there. But I think because the landscape has changed, that's why we're seeing so many different models, whether it's what you're offering or what some of these other distributors are offering that are a bit more hands off, whether it's a United Masters or a STEM or an Empire. Like there's this whole spectrum, I think, of where each record label and where each distributor lies. And that in some ways can be really empowering, but in other ways, it also leaves a lot of options for an artist that's like, oh, what is the best option to go with? And it's not that there's necessarily like a bad decision, but it more so depends on like where you're at, because whatever you're interested in, there probably is an option or multiple options out there to meet you where you're at.
We're taking the approach of the human touch. Like, it's we want people to be with us because they like our team, they like our approach. We're not a volume based distribution company. We're not just signing anything. There is a vetting process and A&R process. So we're doing things that we love, and we're applying management kind of DNA to distribution, where we want to be there every step of the way. When you're performing in front of 3 people at your first show, we want to be, we want to be 2 of those 3 people. When you're in the studio, we're there with you. We're shoulder to shoulder and kind of building it. And as it grows, we want to be there every step of the way. So we're applying a different kind of mentality to the distribution landscape.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. What excites you most about the future of where things are going? There's just so much that is changing right now in the music industry. I think there's a lot of opportunity for artists. As you're looking at the next 5 years or the next decade, what are you most excited about?
I'm excited about technology. I'm excited about the fact that, there is a ton of music out there. A lot of folks will complain about how much is out there, but it's like, for me, it's exciting because there's going to be lots of new artists. There's new stuff to jump into daily. But the way technology is growing and how kids are using it is super exciting. I mean, I'm just, you know, every day there's new ways in which artists have new tools that they have to market and promote themselves, new platforms. Especially given COVID and the way that a lot of folks pivoted. It's just fun. It's the pandemic and COVID hasn't been fun to watch, but the pivoting and the resilience of a lot of young artists has been fun to watch.
Mm.
So I just think that, and it's getting back outside is exciting too. It's I think when 2022, when we're able to really be back outside in a real way, I think it's there's a lot of anticipation and excitement around that as well.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm excited personally, but also for the industry too, because I know that every artist that didn't get to tour in 2020 or even the early parts of 2021 now want to get out there. But I also know it's going to be really competitive. What do you think about that in terms of artists being able to get the spots and the venues that they want, knowing that everyone is ultimately going to want to get in there once things are open?
That part's going to figure itself out. I mean, I think you'll have a high demand from fans and a high demand from artists, and they'll figure out how to utilize, between AEG and Live Nation and independent promoters, they'll figure out how to utilize these buildings and get folks opportunities to perform.
Right. I hear that. Well, we're getting to the tail end of the podcast, but before we let you go, I'm sure you get hit up a lot about people wanting to get advice from you. What did you do to make it this far? What are the standard things that you say to people? What's the advice that you often give to young executives trying to get where you are now?
You get out what you put in. It's being an entrepreneur is not easy. It takes you got to have a stomach for it, because it's definitely it's not easy. And um, it takes a lot of hard work. There are a lot of nights, sleepless nights, not knowing, just kind of what the future holds. The but it's the work. You can't cheat the work. You can't cheat it. You got to put the work in. And so I encourage young people to work hard, build solid relationships. That part has always been tough for me. I'm not like even doing this is like, it's always been kind of tough for me. I like to just do the work and go home. I don't like industry events and kind of the ability to, to build relationships with folks just when there's not, you don't have something very specific to talk about, is like, it's tough, and kind of that part has always been the toughest for me. And because I wear my emotions on my sleeve. Sometimes I can be super direct, which can be off-putting at times, and I have a hard time laughing at jokes that I don't think are funny. So it's challenging, but it's rewarding. I feel blessed to be able to have been in the space, just in it for over 20 years, right, and still be here. We've seen a lot of people come and go. I've seen my friends have a ton of success, and my network of my very close friends become some of the biggest movers and shakers in the space. I've had fun, I've had fun, but there's certainly been lots of sleepless nights. I've missed a lot. I've missed weddings. I've missed birthdays. I've missed, Christmases, New Year's. I've missed a lot over the years, and there's a lot of that you have to sacrifice. And there's times in which I felt like I was working hard, and then would be around a friend, and realize there's another gear. There's another, there's I can go harder, and so it's, and I also really, for my kids and for young people that I talk to, is really about surrounding yourself with the right people as well. I'm motivated by my friend group. They don't, and they wouldn't allow me to just slack. We've we've built a friend group that's, we're super honest with one another, and supportive, but honest and tough on each other. And I feel like that you're the folks that you say, there's that saying that you're a makeup of the 6 people you spend the most time with. And I feel like that's really true as it pertains to business and your work life, and how you build, especially if you're trying to build entrepreneurially. You got to surround yourself with smart people that will help motivate you, and kind of be there for you when you need support or help.
That's real. That's real. And I mean, from the outside in, it definitely seems like you got those people around you that are making those moves as well, working in lockstep with what you're doing. So it's great to see, man. I mean, I know that this was a big past few months with the acquisition. A lot of people are happy to see it. I'm sure you're happy too, but keep grinding, man. It's dope. It's dope. You got a lot of people inspired by what you're doing.
Thank you, man. And you too. It's like I was when I saw that this got set up, I did a little bit of a dive on your podcast and what you built, and you've had some phenomenal people on. I like to see that you've supported some of those young executives that I'm talking about, like just kind of supported that new generation that's coming up, and not just the same kind of 5 names that we see do these these things often. So you as well, man, keep building. If there's anything that myself or my team can, or network can do to be helpful, don't hesitate to give us a shout, man, because I like what you're doing. I like the platform that you're providing for people, and the information that I learned stuff from the couple of podcasts that episodes that I was able to tap into. So it's important, and for kids to get, I didn't know that there was necessarily other options for young Black folks in music aside from being a producer or being an artist, or a DJ or something like that. I didn't know that these things really existed. So I think just the more that young people could hear about, so you had a young publishing executive on, it's like that's a space where it's like a lot of young Black and brown kids don't know that that's a real opportunity, and don't know enough about it. So continue to do your thing, man, and educate young people. And like I said, whatever we can do to be supportive, we're here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. It means a lot. And yeah, let's definitely stay in touch. I'll keep you posted too. And for folks listening that want to follow you and keep in touch with what you're doing, what's the best place they can follow you?
It's on Instagram. It's human.read.sources.
All right, great. Sounds good. Jay Erving, this is a pleasure, man. I'm glad you could
Thank
come
you,
through.
man. Thanks for your time.